Brexit is teetering. It could end as a comedy with a happy ending. Like we have a second referendum and we say, no, that's enough of that. And Boris Johnson and co are comedians, right? That's what I want. Or it can end as a tragedy, like a serious tragedy, when England is, Scotland and Northern Ireland all break up, increase vast poverty, and, that's a tragedy. We're poised on the cusp now of that choice. I want a happy ending in a comedy. When everyone takes the mask off and they'll say, oh God, that was a close thing, I'll write the play and I'll do the Brexit comedy, right? And I'll do it in Shakespeare and English. I can write Shakespeare in English.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's a promise. But I won't do it if it's a tragedy. I'll write it if it's a comedy. And we get a happy ending.
When are all of the significant decisions regarding Brexit, when will they be made? Do you know?
Yeah, the next couple of months are really crucial. I mean, 100 MPs have written to the Prime Minister, so-called Prime Minister, should be called Mini-Minister, demanding a recall of Parliament, because, why are they on holiday for 6 weeks when the country's burning? Well, he doesn't care because he wants it to go ahead, right? So he would quite happily shut Parliament down, and let it happen. Well, they're saying, no, we want to go back and restart it. I think they should literally kind of go in and restart debates, So, on the current schedule, Parliament is officially going to restart on, I think it's the 5th of September. Have you discovered the Parliament channel? Do you ever watch that?
No.
Okay, so Parliament is televised on this thing called the Parliament channel. You just Google it and it comes up. And you can watch all the debates.
Okay.
I strongly recommend you watch. And what they're hoping is that, when Parliament reassembles, that the Brexit policy of this government will be challenged and stopped. And it's going to be very interesting to watch, and if you listen to the debates, because most intelligent, moderate, good parliamentarians, whatever party they're in, there are good Conservatives, good Liberal Democrats, good Labour, Greens, SNP, there's a majority of people now realise what I'm saying is true, and that Brexit is a nightmare. And their duty, actually, is to stop it. I'm a fervent believer, I pray every day that when Parliament reassembles, they will make that vote and vote it out. They've got the duty and the right to do it. The other lot, Johnson and the hard right-wing people that have taken over the Conservative Party, are going to try and force it through anyway. I don't think they'll get away with it. It's illegal. So watch over the next couple of months. It's going to be really interesting. Watch on that channel.
Just got a few more questions for you, Dr. Daffern. What does it mean if I was to tell you, if I was to say the word God to you? Who is God to you?
Yeah, thank you. I love that question. So God is an Old English word related to the word good. Most people don't realise this. In Old English, which is Anglo-Saxon, which I've studied, it's the origin of the language we're using to talk in. Tolkien was a professor of Anglo-Saxon at Oxford. If you study etymology, the origin of words, you find their histories. And the origin of the word God is related exactly to the Old Anglo-Saxon word good. It's the same concept. So when the Bible says God is good, it literally is true. So, and there's a very funny things happened in language. In Old English, the word God meant good, and the pronunciation was different, and the word good meant God. That's weird, isn't it? So if we were talking in Anglo-Saxon, and I want to say I believe in God, I would say I believe in good. That was how they pronounced it. And if so it's the same word. So, okay, what is this thing, goodness? Well, I believe that deep down, behind all the difficulties we have in life, all the troubles, heartaches, problems, there is something good at the basis of it all. Just like there's light coming off that candle. Deep down, through all the stories of our lives, like in a good Shakespeare play that ends happily, you know, in spite of everything, it ends happily. I think for the majority of people, that's the case. And God is the goodness that brings a happy ending to our lives. I also believe, because I know a lot of people don't get justice in this world, you know, the good people are killed off like they were in Auschwitz or whatever, and the evil people rule for a while, that you have to look at this in a bigger picture. This is why Kant, a great philosopher, said there's got to be life after death to make sense of ethics. Because if there's no life after death, no accountability for individual souls, then evil goes unpunished. Because we know that evil people get away with stuff in this life, and that the law never catches them, you know. So therefore Kant said there has to be something supernatural underpinning this life to give justice. And that's what Christianity believes. That's what all religions believe. That's why they believe in life after death and some kind of judgment after death. So, you know, God is the goodness that underpins that whole ethical system. Is how I would explain it philosophically.
And as you said that law never catches bad people and their acts, do you, as a believer of heaven and hell myself, do you believe in heaven and hell and judgment and eternity or any of those kind of things?
Yeah, definitely, yeah. I think those are all what Hegel used to call picture language. So there's two types of doing religion and theology. You can think in picture language, right? Like in medieval churches, they would draw heaven and hell on the walls, like in the Sistine Chapel, and they'd show all the people burning in hell and all the good angels on the clouds, right? That's picture language. The reality, as Hegel and other philosophers explained, is a sort of moral reality of after death you're faced with your conscience. So if you've been horrible and killed people and caused immense suffering, you have to watch those scenes again and again and again and realise the suffering you caused. Whereas if you've been good and tried to spread light and love and liberty, then you know you get to have fun in the heavenly library. That's where I believe I'm going to be. You know, because to me the highest form of pleasure is study. So to me there's got to be a library in heaven where all the books, you know, are all the time assembled. Yeah, and eternity. I mean, yes, there's something beyond normal time. Einstein talked about time and space as like a bubble. It's one thing, time-space bubble. And I think there's something beyond the time-space bubble, which is like the formative causation of it. I call that the mind overseer. You know, that's the intelligence that has somehow devised this time-space bubble we're in. And I call that eternity. That's the realm of pure thought or intellect or mind, which we humans can access. That's the point of philosophy. When you study your deep philosophy, Plato, whatever, you realise you break through beyond the time-space bubble and you can touch eternity, even in this body, in this life. That's what Buddhists call nirvana. It's like the place of enlightenment.
I also believe in the death and the resurrection of Jesus Christ, and I believe that through him that we can actually access eternity in heaven with our Creator, who I believe is God. And as you were saying that you believe that you're going to be in heaven, in the library of heaven, as you study peace and you want peace, is that your reason behind why people should go to heaven, or do you believe that something needs to be done in order for you to go to heaven? Because I'm actually aware of the fact that people think if you're bad you go to hell, if you're good you go to heaven. However, that's not what I believe. So I was thinking like what your belief would be, like exactly.
That's great. That's a really good question. I think that, like I was saying, heaven and hell are the kind of psychic reality that we create through our interior goodness or badness. If I'm plotting harm and evil and suffering, and if I'm a thief and a murderer all the time, my mind is going to be hell. Eventually it'll catch up with me, because we all have a conscience, right? And when the conscience kicks in, you can't live with yourself, So I think that's what, and if you have to do that lots and lots in the afterlife, that's kind of hell to me. I agree with you that Christ came to earth, that incarnation, as a great rabbi, teacher, spiritual elder, whatever you want to call him, son of God, no language is adequate, to show the path of truth, love and virtue. And he didn't have long at it. They got him pretty quickly. He was only teaching about 3 years, poor chap. And he must, incredible guy. And of course the forces of darkness and ignorance, the powers that be, the kind of people that are behind Brexit and wars and World War II and Auschwitz, they all clamped down on that Jesus guy. The minute they kind of realised what was going on. The Roman Empire, which was like the fascist state of imperial, militarism, had him arrested and, tried and all that. And they killed him. With the collusion of the Jewish collaborators that were there, everyone was taking a cut from that unjust system, which used slavery, by the way, as part of its thing. So they killed him. But what I love about Christianity and the Gospels, and I've done a commentary on them, is that the resurrection happened. This is the miracle. I can't explain it. I mean, I've given talks about this, and I'd love to understand it, how it happened, etc. But the fact is, it must have happened, because otherwise there wouldn't be Christianity, there wouldn't be a church. These people couldn't have gone around saying Christ is risen if they were making the whole thing up, which is what some people say.
It's true.
And within a few years of that, there were churches all over the Mediterranean. Here in France, near me, Lyon, there were Christians. So Christ defied the laws of evil, because his goodness was so intense that it outshone the darkness. That's how I see it. So you see, I mean, to me, Brexit is of the same kind of thing. It's like a demonic attack on the goodness of my country. Our country is a Christian country. That means it's pledged to follow the light and to bear witness to that resurrection and to the powers of love. In Brexit, it's not doing that. It's failing. It's been hijacked by a demonic thing based on fear, division, and disunity. And so that's why we have the Union Jack. It's the symbol of the saints, the crosses of the saints, Andrew and St George and all the rest. We've got to stand up as saints and be counted here and see off this demonic attack on our country. I also believe in the Lord's Prayer, where it says, "Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Thy kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven." So I don't think it's enough to just say, "Oh well, I'm fine. I'm going to go to heaven. Forget about the world." No, as Christians, one should be active to create justice on this plane, on this world. So that's why I live in a library. It's not enough to say I'm going to live in a heavenly library. I want to live in libraries also on this plane. That's why I have a Vatican reader's ticket. I love Oxford University Library. I've been to many of the greatest libraries around the world. They're to die for. And I want all my kids and grandchildren and your children to have access to higher education so that we can have deep enough learning to see off these kind of demonic attacks, really. Of which Brexit is just the latest. There'll be others after we've stopped it. So that's why you have to educate yourself more than what your teachers tell you. Read extra, study more, learn deeper stuff, because it's like inoculating yourself against ignorance in the future.
Wow. It's been fantastic speaking to you, Dr. Daffern, about Brexit, but I just have one more question for people who are of my age, who may be watching this or who may come across this.
Okay.
If people who were interested in the subject of politics and government, who were unable to actually have an opportunity or a chance to study it, what would you advise them to do?
Well, study it themselves. If the schools are not properly providing that subject, like if you're not getting citizenship studies, if you're not allowed to do politics, read it yourself. There's plenty of things on YouTube. You can go to the public libraries. Go to your school library and demand they get books on politics. Most school libraries aren't very well equipped. We should make. I wish there was more money for school libraries and less money for tanks, bombs, and weapons. Education should be the priority for our nation and our continent. But the motivation has to come from within. Education isn't something somebody can do for you.
Definitely.
I learned that the hard way, right? You know, I spent my whole life like educating and either teaching or studying. But you have to have discipline and self-will. That's why they, so Christ's students were called disciples. And that simply means people who were prepared to accept discipline. And that means they were willing to be educated. And they had to educate themselves, you know. They got to ask Christ loads of questions, but not always. And then he was taken from them. And they, you know, they would try and remember what he'd said. And that's why they wrote the Gospels down. Like I always say to my kids when they're studying, for instance, religious studies, at least read one whole Gospel before you do your GCSE. And a lot of them don't. They don't even bother to do that. Like read the whole, I mean ideally read all 4 Gospels and all the rest of the New Testament. And then get a dictionary that explains it all. And then get books out about political philosophy. There are great, like you can get the A-level texts and things. You can do it extra. You could go home to Birmingham and go to your head of sixth form and say you want to do extra politics A-level. And they have to then provide, you know, a bit of teaching for that. You can register and sit the exam independently. It's fascinating stuff. You learn about democracy and constitutions and all that thing. And the other thing I just want to say to finish is that the other scam that schools like brainwash you with is that learning is difficult. And that like it's really tough. Oh, you couldn't do an A-level in politics? No, you're already doing what? History, English and French, right? Well, no, it's not. Education is easy if you love it. If you love it, then it comes easily. And you can do a lot more than you thought. You know, it's like you just passed your driving test, right? Well, if I'd have told you 4 years ago you'd pass your driving test, you'd probably say no, you know, it's too difficult. But you've just done it. If you want to do something and love it, it's a doddle. What's the same with learning and philosophy and politics and everything I'm talking about? If you actually love it enough to think it through and to realise there are answers, it's not like never ending. You can figure this thing called Brexit through. You can work it out. It's wrong. That's it. You know, and then you can move on and do other stuff. So anyway, it should be like pleasurable, and that's what it means to be a philosopher. It means you love wisdom, and that's a secret they don't tell you in schools. Like school should be fun. You know, has anyone told you that?
No.
Right. Okay. They haven't told you the word school is from a Greek root, skule, which meant leisure activities. School is what you do when you're having fun. When you leave school, leisure, then you have to work, and that's not such fun, unless you're lucky to get a good job. You know? So school is your leisure activity time. So it should be pleasurable, you know. So anyway, I've given you loads of secrets to think about here.
I appreciate it. It's been nice to get to know a lot more about politics and Brexit, and certainly educate others who are unaware of these things that are happening.
Yeah. Go back and tell the people of Birmingham and get them, you know, thinking about it. Thinking is our secret weapon for truth. Okay? Okay, bless you. Thanks for listening. And we'll no doubt meet again.